release to experiment on people coming up, which is great. We're going to go over lower body today. Lower body is going to, if we go back to page, for me it's page 7, I think for you guys it's page 6. So lower body B is going to be hip flexors, legs and hips, so hip flexors, IT band, quads, knees, calves, feet, and meditation. So grounding poses.
Page 8, I think.
Well, it's page 7 for me, so it should be 6.
8 and 9 for us.
Where it says AYRx training. No, I'm looking at AYRx training, therapeutics 7 through 8 at the top. So just look on page 6 for me, and then it's an outline. The first one, number 7, it says lower body, A and B.
Yeah, that's true.
On page 6. Yeah, the very first one. That's a review. So we did A yesterday, and now we're doing B. So that's the review. That's like the overview of what we're covering. Okay, so now we're going to start. We worked up to number 13. So we're going to continue on with 13B. Right? We wound up doing hips yesterday, which was really nice. And now we're going to do hips as a review again with some of the, so we can open the hips in many directions, right? So the hips are very dynamic. It's the bowl of the pelvis, which I talked about a little bit in my last training, which seemed interesting for people to think about. So I think of the pelvis as a floating mechanism. It's not static or stationary. The pelvis is usually pretty locked on people, but the hips move in all these different directions, and then it's connected to the femur bone by a ball and socket. So the knees are a hinge, the hip joint is a ball and socket, and then the pelvis itself moves and rocks. So it's not static, and so there is some play in the SI joints, which we all know when it's stuck, and there's also like a little bit of asymmetry that can happen in the body with people with getting a torque in the spine, and you'll notice that one side, so for me, this side opens up way more than this side for me. And if you twist from side to side a little bit, you might feel, just do it with me, please. You guys are like, just feel if there's one side that feels a little bit more sticky than it, just even slightly less rotation, right? That's usually true for every person, depending on the dominant arm, the dominant leg, habits, which side people carry like purses on or some sort of bag, and how we drive, right? The mouse arm thing. I'm left-handed, so I tend to use my mouse on the left, but most people have their mouse on the right. I can actually do both, but people get into these habits that create these asymmetries, and that actually translate down into the hips. And so we want to kind of work the hips in all directions. So we can open up the hips out, right, like we do in butterfly, but then we can open up the hips in like we do in the pigeon pose. And then we can flex the leg back, which we're opening up the quad, right? And then we can actually come into like a forward fold and get into the back body, which we usually associate with the glutes, but that's also the hips. The whole iliac crest is something that I work with a lot. That is the sticky part of the side body, this whole underbelly of the body, I like to call it, that doesn't really get worked very much. And when we create more length and space just by the connective tissue, when I say connective tissue, there's lots of different connective tissue, but the fascia or the sheath over the body can get really kind of cemented into place or really sticky in those spots. So we've been working a lot with the ribs and opening up the ribs, and you can really feel the difference in the upper body. And then we're going to continue to open up this band of the pelvis. I just thought now would be a good time. Again, this is all in the manual, so you can review it later. Now is a good time to we went on the first day deep into the systems of the body, working with the spine. And now I just wanted to let you know that in the manual, I did put some descriptions and ideas. Not everybody is familiar with the systems. If you've been doing body work and other forms of healing or health and wellness, you might be familiar with the different systems. But just in case I did just give it a whole synopsis with some links to follow up if you want to learn more about the digestive system and nervous system. I know that I would talk about the lymph a lot, but we can go over the lymph a little bit more. We can also talk about the immune system, which I talk about extensively in the practice, but talk about why this is so good for the immune system again. The skeletal system, obviously. Muscular system, that one's pretty obvious. And then the fascia and the endocrine system and the hormones are my particular area of expertise that I like to bring into people's awareness and why it's so beneficial to use the swing. So we can go in a little bit more detail about those conversations today, since it's our last day. And then I do talk about the chakra system, how it overlays the spine, and then the brain function. And brain functionality integrated with the swing is super important to me. And then from there, I talk a little bit about the meridians and just give an overview of the meridians and the energetic network of the body, which is connected to the nervous system. And then as like a little teaser, I just give you guys a summary of like working with the quantum field, what I call the quantum field. A lot of people can call it by different things. The morphogenic field or the M field is a popular name for it. The human body field is another way of describing it. But in the advanced training, or module 3, more advanced metaphysics, we'll talk about the sacred geometrics and the toroidal force field, the microcosmic orbit, working with the Merkaba, spiral dynamics, in particular, really understanding spatial and spiral dynamics, moving with multidimensional space, and then dormant strands of DNA and how this interfaces with the DNA. So we want to talk about that in this practice because obviously we're doing application and just learning body parts, right? So this is more like body matrix, I like to call it. So aerodynamics is module 1 with the AYP, body matrix, module 2, sacred geometrics, module 3. Any questions about nervous system, immune system, lymph, endocrine, hormones, digestion, anything that I haven't touched upon that would be helpful to have more clarity in the beginning before we get into the swing? Any curiosities? Anything you've noticed in your own practice using the swing?
I noticed my shoulders opened in the middle of the night last night. I was all of a sudden like, I felt like something went.
Awesome.
Felt interesting.
Yeah. Is that different for you than your normal shoulder position? How did that feel in the body for them to open?
Yeah, it just felt like this release and this relaxation.
Nice.
Happened.
Were you laying on your back? I'm just curious.
I don't even remember. I was like kind of really deep going
Yeah.
into sleep.
Yeah.
Or sleeping, and then I just kind of felt this sensation, and then I just made note of it.
Oh, nice.
I usually am on my side or my stomach.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you for that feedback.
Good.
I was in bed and I felt like I was swinging.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I was in bed. I was swinging. I mean, I knew I was in bed, but I felt like I was in the swing like that.
Yeah, that's swing
And I
motion.
felt that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that probably happens a lot, but it's really strange.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that last time.
Yeah, it happened again.
Yeah, that kind of rhythm wave or harmonic motion is kind of like, even sitting here, I'm always like pulsing in a way, you know, it's just like getting that movement in the body just becomes second nature. Because we are still, but we're never static.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of this thing is orbiting and spinning, and then there's the bigger spins, and then there's that, you know, like the ocean, that pulse that's moving through with the breath. So all of that's part of the swing, kind of amplified.
Yeah.
Anything that you're noticing about the swing, either this weekend or just in general?
More like what I'm not noticing is a big one is back, separating my adductors from my quads.
Okay.
So I feel this space for the pelvis to move, the sacrum to move forward, and it's separating the energy lines of the medial quads and adductors. It goes all the way down to my feet.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel this more than that which
Yeah.
opens up all the internal stuff. So thousands
Yeah.
of sensations.
Yeah, it's like the Lotus kind of splaying open.
Yeah.
It's the image I'm getting when you're talking about it. Really nice. How about you, Raspberry? Anything you want to share?
I have a thing that I'm working on where my shoulders kind of like pop out when I rotate sometimes, and so I feel like that's been happening less as I've been in the swing, but I think I still want to do some fine tuning around that with like the THERAPEUTIX moves,
Yes.
so that I can maintain the alignment and not strain the joints.
Yes. Definitely. Yeah, we had lots of different shoulder stuff going on for people that I was noticing. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the brain function or the impact and effects on the brain once again. I can do a little synopsis because they all kind of blend together. As you guys well know, there's two major hubs of the body that we're working on. And these bands of energy or these hubs of energy happen to be where people hold the most tension. They also happen to be with the pathway of the spine where the nervous system spreads out down the legs and into the limbs, and down the arms and into the hands. So these two major hubs, with the heart being the kind of apex, is like a seesaw effect. So whatever's happening in the lower body is happening in the upper body, and it's all kind of like a wave. And the spine is actually this beautiful S curve, which gives it its buoyancy. So my particular focus is working on the space behind the heart, which allows the heart to kind of come forward and blossom open, so the head can sit back over the body, and there's like more space in the front of the spine, so the back of the spine isn't carrying all of the weight. So it's not like in one plane, but it's more of that column or that spherical nature where the whole band of energy is working together. So that's when we get into the spirals and the spins. And so the upper body splays outward, so this is an external rotation, right? And the lower body splays inward, which is this inward rotation, okay? So these two spirals are happening simultaneously in the body, and people either get one or the other, but they don't do both, like in opposite directions. So it's really fascinating to start to bring that in and how they work together, and that's how the Merkaba field spins as well. Like I said, we'll save that for Module 3. So we get these two like movements that are seemingly opposing, but they're complementary to keep the energy flowing. So it's really a beautiful thing when we start to kind of feel and trace the energy in space with the different movements. So we've been working a lot on the splaying open here, and now we're going to work a lot on the foundation and this internal spiraling, which then goes up the spine. So it spirals up the spine and allows the spine to feel like held from a strong foundation. So it's really shifting the entire stance that we take, or the anchoring that we have, the footing we have, and it's a pretty amazing practice when we work with those spirals. The internal spiraling of the legs is really big for me in the forward folds, and what I'm working on with the lifting of the hips and spreading the sit bone so there's space for the tailbone to really sit, and then the energy can move up the spine in a new way. So all of that interface with the nervous system obviously runs down the meridians, the energy pathways, and interfaces with the chakra system, the energy centers of the body, and they can spin and open and turn on in different ways, which overlays the endocrine system. So we have these layers, like an onion in the body, of how the energy likes to move. So then, for me, the most important aspect, not just in the inversions, but the entire practice, is the ability to impact the brain function, and the brain functionality having a lot to do with not only our mood and our attitude and how we feel, but our pathways and the choices we make and how we're thinking. And linear thinking leads to like a certain result or outcome in the world, like our choices. But when we get into more of this holographic way of looking at the world and infinite possibilities or multiple pathways, it sparks our imagination and our creativity and our capacity to learn new things and take on new challenges in the world. You know, so when people get into that old path or that old groove and they get stuck, you know, this practice actually helps them break free of some of those old patterns and belief systems. Like, to me, that's how important this work is, you know, as well as getting fit and feeling good, looking good, you know, I really use this as an empowerment practice to build more confidence, more self-esteem, but also the way people are moving in the world. And they move from this place of openness with alignment and with room for more, being able to take in more and release the old. So for me, it's really significant on what it does in the brain to create new neural pathways, which gives us new opportunities and looking at things from a new perspective. So I really like working with the brain and the brain function from that kind of symbology, as well as the impact that it does have on the pineal and the hypothalamus and pituitary, and how that interacts with the DNA, the pineal, in some practices that I use as the master cell and interface with the DNA. So the way that the hormones can be affected by stimulating these different glands is pretty amazing. And I've gotten that feeling often, and I've seen it in you guys, like the happy hormones or the euphoria or that sense of peace or calm or everything's okay. Even if it's just for like a little bit, it just like soothes the entire nervous system, and that naturally will boost the immune system. So we have our physical immunity, we have our social immunity, which I call co-immunity. You know, it's like community is our co-immunity. And then we have like our emotional immunity. So we have all these different bodies with our immune system as well that we're boosting. So I like to talk about the brain function a lot and what's happening for us, as well as how that creates more, like we talked about, more clarity, more focus, more capacity to like take on information in the world. It like really opens up more space for us to invite in like the complexity of life. At least that's what I found, like, at least I think so. You know, I'm able to like navigate a lot of different waters, and then I'm also able to be really clear when I need to just focus all my energy on one path. Like when there's a lot of information coming at me, I can focus it down more easily and just focus on that one thing and do one thing at a time. Do that one thing well. So those are the two kind of things that I've noticed about my world, which gets impacted in a positive way by doing this practice. Every person will be different, so it might take time for someone to build up to having those experiences after the rest of the systems start to harmonize and complement one another and come into balance. So that might take a while for people to experience, but I definitely notice it. Anything you'd like to share about that, Julia? You always have some really cool things to say about what you experience with your brain or your focus or making choices.
Well, I think it's going to help me be more clear. I tend to be out a lot, out here. I'm not very, I'm present in one sense, but in another sense, I'm not very present. When I get a lot of information, it overwhelms me and I get like brain fog. Mm-hmm. But I think that this is having an effect on being able to see more clearly. Mm-hmm. Besides the posturing and the posture, that was still very powerful. And I shared with you guys yesterday about this system allows you to focus on unlimited possibilities, whereas we're so many methods focus on correcting limitations. This is the opposite, so it's kind of fun. So then I'm just mumbling, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, so I like what you had to say about the difference between correcting limitations to experiencing infinite possibility.
Right, yeah. And then I noticed that the limitations start to not be an issue.
Yeah, this is when I changed my practice over from Zen healing to quantum healing back in between 2000 and 2002. All the energetics were opening up for me because I was really, really good at identifying a problem and correcting it, which was a really painful process for my clients, I have to say. Like, I'm really good at pointing out what's not working and then making steps towards correcting that, and fixing that, the fixing mentality. And then as I started to shift over to the energetics and see the wholeness of the being or working with the whole system and kind of enhancing the parts that are working and getting them to function in harmony with the working parts, then it changed the whole way that I was working with my clients, and it changed the whole way my clients were experiencing the work. And the swing for me is the same thing. It is just shamanic cheerleading of just like believing in you and seeing that you can do it, and then having you mimic me doing it is teaching and then training your body how to do it instead of fixing something that's wrong.
In some of the postures that I was having difficulties was when I hooked into the limitation philosophy.
Sure. Yeah, when we
Yeah.
say I can't.
Yeah.
As soon as the mind says I can't do that.
Which is then also hooked into the idea of being a victim. So it's, I mean, I could see
Belief
all this
systems.
unraveling. I'm like, oh man, and then
Which is a pathway in the brain. Like that's
I
the
could-
groove
I could feel
of,
it.
yeah, and that kind of victim language. or
Yeah, I mean,
disempowering
I could
language.
see all these little threads here.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, which would not have happened if it'd
Yeah.
been in a safe environment where they're there to help
Yeah.
correct your limitations. So you just get stuck still with that thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just interesting. So
It is.
just all these layers start. I'm like,
Unraveling. Well, it's true because we want a container where we can have those things be revealed in order for them to be healed. Like our entire Western medicine system is set up to correct some sort of problem. Once the problem is in place, we label and identify the problem, and then we take steps to correct that. Where my approach, and I know Heather's approach, and a lot of us that are more dedicated to the healing arts, is looking at the whole system and how the whole system can function in a place of like optimal health, and the swing is for me the perfect vehicle for that transformation, because it is just realizing that everything can and does work together perfectly with the level of support and nourishment that the body needs, whether the mind needs nourishing or the emotional body needs nourishing or the physical body needs that nourishment in order to function better. You know, and that's why I like these small containers that we create too. So
it's just so funny. I just have to laugh. Because, you know, and then the word sorry started coming out. And it came, sorry. And again, back to the limitation, and then back to the, and then I'm just saying,
Yeah, that's why I call it
interesting.
open, align, release.
Yeah.
Release that stuff.
Yeah.
Open, align, release. That's the order in which this happens. Without the release, we just keep repeating the same pattern. And it's that important and it's that deep. And this is, like I said, a therapeutics program because I can see what's happening in people's bodies when they're really willing to release it. And most people get stuck in the how to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just get in the swing and do it, and then you'll see new neural pathways open up. You'll have more possibility, the potential for that transformation just by having fun. Like, you know, the shoulders opening up have way more to do with this kind of like heart expanding than some sort of posturing. Do you know what I mean? Even though we might feel the posturing of it, it's like like there's no end to that unfurling of the lotus. You know, it just keeps unfurling, no matter how open we are. My body's constantly in a state of transformation. It's amazing. And even doing this every day for years and years and years, there's no end to it. I think that's exciting, you know, especially if we start to reverse, not only reversing gravity, but reversing the effects of the deep linear inheritance of conditioning and belief systems and all this stuff, where we're actually birthing a new earth through ourselves by changing over to our light bodies, you know, making that awakening or activating of the light body. So it's like, for me, that's so exciting. Like, I'm excited to get in this time. I don't see it as work. And even when I butt up against some limitation, you know, for me, I butt up against my own limitations and challenges in teaching, right? So I was talking to Donnie this morning, and he was like, oh, you know, how's it going for you? I'm like, well, for me, physically, I love it. 6 hours in the swing, this is my favorite. Like, for me, the limitation is, or the challenge is, how can I become a better teacher? Because I can do it all day long, but can I share it? It doesn't matter if I can do it, right? It's like, can I actually take that into a format, a structure that makes sense, and using not only the language, but the vibrational offering and accommodating what comes up for people, holding space for that, you know, being a good leader, whatever that means, but, you know, being someone who can lead the way or hold the spaces is my growing edge, which I get excited about. Like, how can I come up with a better way of finding that expression, making it more fun? Because for me, intense is natural for me. Like, intense is going to happen, but can we bring more play into that? Like, profound play and serious fun and all of those kind of things that seem like juxtaposed, but they're actually invited to merge with each other in a new way. So yeah, that's all part of what's happening in each and every one of us, right? So we honor those limitations, we invite them into the space, and then we play with that to see what's possible. Because we have all had the same conditioning. We're all swimming in the same sea, and yet we're just at different levels on the wave in our evolutionary practice. So we're all going to get there. Doesn't matter if you're at the front of the wave or the back of the wave or in the middle. Still the wave.
Well, like that swing that happened last time, but I felt like it was release. It was like letting energy blocks go. It's like I felt that the physical swinging in the bed last night was, actually releasing a lot of those concepts. Just the brain was shifting. It was like, and I just had an image of a llama in Peru. The llamas, if you put 61 pounds, they sit down, they won't move. 59, 60 pounds, they'll track up the Andean mountains. But you put 60 and a half, and they sit down. And there was a moment where there was all this information, and mentally, I sat down like a llama. I didn't want to go 61, even though I probably could do 65. There was this block that just brain fog comes in, and it was like sitting down because it was past the 60 pounds. It was very interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, or maybe that's just the intelligence of body knowing there's like, a weight capacity that is optimal for its function. And we like also honor that. Because we tend to push ourselves way past our like sweet spot or our comfort zone where there's a healthy amount, but then at a certain point the system breaks, right? So I'm always looking where we're not so engaged that we're contracted, but we find that sweet spot in us. And if that's 60 pounds for the llama, then we honor the intelligence of the body, the system. I don't know. There's so many ways to look at it.
Mine was the brain, so it's fascinating.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over that and talk about that. And, of course, there will be more that's added to the manual, like I said. But go over that online and look at that. And if you have any questions as we continue on with the practice, then feel free to be in touch with me. But, take the time to read about the systems if you're not super familiar. And enjoy the practice of getting to know the body as this holistic, advanced, magnificent machine that it is. And this is only just scratching the surface of it. So I just give a little bit of information, but that's what's also really special about the AYRx program. It is more education with the application than the average person would be ready to take in with all the other information that they're getting. Yeah. So
this teaches us to conduct power and not to engage muscle. Like that, it makes you realize that every human body is designed just basically to conduct power, and power is unlimited. When you're in the swing, it allows you to focus on that, hooking onto that grid instead of contracting. I don't know, very interesting. I just felt like we were all like vessels of conducting power after this.
Yeah, and I like to think of the brain, and then we'll wrap it up, as a transmitting and receiving mechanism.
Yeah.
The brain is not a storehouse. It's like an antenna. And so we're tuning in our antenna. And when our spine is nice and aligned and open, then it's communicating with the earth and it's communicating with the heavens and it's interfacing with the heart intelligence. We have this infinity loop that goes through the heart to the brain to the belly. And we want to constantly be in communication with these different intelligence centers. And then the brain can be really just transmitting and receiving in that mechanism. So can we receive more and open up the receptor sites in the brain to listen and get that information or get the resources we need, connection to sources, the resourcing of that energy that we need to produce or manifest or be on the earth, hold those frequencies. So yeah, there's a lot of levels to it. Thank you for having a chat. Let's get in our swing and do a little warm-up lap with the hips. Okay, so right now I want you guys to go ahead and turn to page 9 so that we're looking at 13B in hip flexors. Okay? Thank you for having a chat. Anything else? Everybody good?
I love doing the anatomy coloring book.